Welcome to Licensed Poetics, a podcast where we talk about creative storytelling. And I'm your host, Achim.
And I'm your host, Ling.
Today we have a very special guest, Malena.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, I'm going to introduce Malena to you all. Meet Malena Fiorito, the Argentinian storyteller who's been leaving her mark in the film and social media scenes. Crafting captivating content for big names like Disney and Coca-Cola, Malena's now setting her sights on a new adventure, writing, diving headfirst into a world of short stories. Each one's a unique blend of wanderlust and personal reflection, a snapshot of her journey through life. For Malena, writing isn't just a pastime, it's her way of understanding the world, one word at a time. So come along and join her as she pens down life's adventures. Because for Malena, every moment is a story just waiting to be told.
Thank you so much for having me. This is so exciting.
Yay!
We're talking about how being on a podcast was on your vision board 2024.
Totally. This is a very check it off the list moment for me.
Yes.
So I'm very excited. It was very precise and I don't know why I put it there. But if you put something out there, the universe will find a way to just give it to you. And here I am. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
isn't that
like
beautiful?
your manifestation.
Exactly. You always I find myself always looking for something. And then the moment I stop looking for it, it comes.
Wow.
So it's very interesting.
Achim, could you tell us how you met Malena?
Oh, yeah.
Very serendipitous. Very serendipitous. I'm actually interested to listen to the other side of the story. This is the first time I've listened to it. Yeah.
Okay, right.
Can't wait to hear it.
A Saturday afternoon, having a little walk in the park, and then it's sunny, the weather is nice. And yeah, I just saw you reading. Yeah. On a bench.
On a bench.
Yeah. And then you were reading this exact same book that
Literally.
you brought today. Yeah.
I call this my Bible. We'll talk about it later.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. It was, I saw you coming up to me. We're like, hey, what are you reading? And then we took it from there. Just started talking about Borges and Cortázar and whatnot.
Oh, Borges.
Everything just starts to flow into one place.
Exactly. And now we're here.
That's so cute. Let's dive into our reading updates. Achim, what do you have for this week?
Okay, so this week I have this really interesting book called Cold Enough for Snow by Jessica Au. Actually, this book was recommended to me by a friend, Annika. Shout out to Annika. Way back in 2023. So one of my reading goals for 2024 is to read more Australian authors.
Yeah, I was going to say Jessica, I've definitely heard of her name as an
Yeah.
Australian writer. What's the title?
The title is Cold Enough for Snow.
Is it a...
So it's a fiction written from this young woman's perspective. The story is pretty simple, is that she's taking her mom to travel in Japan. And then while she is from Australia, her mother lives in Hong Kong. And so they're just traveling together in Japan. That's the whole story. But her language is really flowing and easy to read. Some may even say that language is a little bit plain. But what really sets this book apart from others is that how speculative it is. So there's a lot of I think what my mom thinks going on over here. And then on the surface, they're having this conversation about their travel plans, the food they eat, mundane life updates. But what's going underneath, it's more that's been left unsaid.
Yeah, what you said just now is really sad and also really, I think, realistic.
Yeah.
When you're just, you care about your mom, but you don't know what she's actually thinking
Yeah.
because this generation and language gap between you.
Yeah.
And then so you're just I think that's what she thinks. And you're
Yeah.
you never know and you're always unsure.
That's exactly the point. And then I actually noticed it because I was traveling with my parents in Europe. Sometimes the conversation with parents gets a little bit tentative and hesitant because we're both trying to sort of cultivate this nice conversation going on, and then everything is harmonious.
You keep up the appearances.
Yeah.
of
And
peace.
everyone, either side is afraid to steer the conversation into a bad direction. So we just getting a little bit protective.
Do you think that's just an Asian thing though? Or do you think this author in the book has built up the relationship enough so that someone else from a different culture could also understand?
I guess it's definitely something that's cross-cultural. What do you think? Have you?
It's interesting because I feel like with me being so far away from home, FYI to everyone listening, I'm from Argentina. When I'm in Argentina, when I'm with my parents there, the relationships the relationship and the talks that we have tend to get more protective and what you literally just said. But now that I'm so far away from home, whenever I have a conversation with them, it's my goal and my unconscious plan is to be as genuine as possible. So when I go to them for advice, it can be genuine as well.
Wow.
But I feel that also helps because you're not seeing them face to face.
Yeah.
So it's like they cannot quote unquote judge you.
Yeah.
But whenever I FaceTime them, I notice my language be like, oh no, everything is fine. And then maybe when I call them, I'm like, Mom, Dad, please help me, So it's interesting when you have that
The distance.
the distance and not even seeing them face to face,
Yeah.
that really helps you bring your barriers down.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. And then in this book, she's literally traveling with her mom. I don't know if that's common at all in not Asian cultures when you go traveling with your adult parents, go on holidays.
I've traveled a lot with my mom, but because my mom, she does travel for work a lot, so she's like, come and join me. So
it's a little bit different.
It's a little bit different. But yeah, we find ourselves like my mom, she's the best. Shout out to my mom, she's listening to this. But she's like, when we're traveling together, it's so easy. But then the day to day, maybe like
that friction, that day
exactly,
to day.
yeah.
She writes something that I relate a lot. Is that when I was traveling with my parents, like I asked them what do they want, and they'd be like, "Oh, you choose." It's always like that. I'm not even like halfway through the book, and then I'm writing this even philosophical realizations. The protagonist, she also has a sister. She was FaceTiming her sister while they were traveling, and then her sister already has a family. They have kids, so it's like something that she noticed is that sometimes when we were younger, when we were kids, and then just because we're going through something that's inexplicable because we don't have enough emotional depth, like emotional capacity, and then hence we're not understood. Like the things we do are incomprehensible to the people around us. That's why like we act up as like kids being weird. And these sort of feelings can accumulate and then become something like bigger later on in life when you are older. Like sometimes it may even become like a mental like disorder. At the very least, you become like eccentric in a way. And then what protagonist's sister does is like she allows her daughter to buy a really ugly dress in her opinion, and then her daughter would just wear this dress for 3 days in a row, and then even wear this dress while she was sleeping.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, and then she allows it because she sort of understands what's like the consequence would be if she doesn't.
Right.
Yeah. And then,
what is the consequence?
The consequence is like I don't know, like 20 years later, and then it will have this grudge, have this like the thing that I do is not understood. So like I will be eccentric in a way.
It gives her a sense of power.
Yeah.
Are you talking about how little things that parents do can shape a kid's personality profoundly? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I guess so. This book really is all about sort of parenthood then.
It's about like children, parents-children relationship, and then how you navigate through them.
I'm curious, is it written through the daughter's perspective or through the mom's perspective?
So like everything is through the daughter's perspective, and then there's not even like a proper conversation. It's like, oh, my mom tells me this. So like everything is like literally in the daughter's perspective.
Oh, that is frustrating.
Yeah, exactly.
It can be like
cool.
That's my reading update.
Awesome. Okay, my reading update. As promised in our last episode, I'm going to talk about The Three Body Problem by Cixin Liu today.
Congrats on finishing this one.
Thank you. I do think I deserve a congratulations for finishing the book. I'll explain why now. Overall, what do I think of the book? I'm impressed.
Wow.
That's I would say one sentence summary of what I think.
That's
And
such a huge compliment
it is from me.
you.
Malena, I'm extremely harsh with all of my
Yeah.
books.
Okay, good to know.
She's very critical.
I'm very critical.
Goodreads will read. I'm impressed.
Exactly. Not many books can make me say that.
How many stars?
Yeah,
I'm
that's the
curious.
question.
Oh, I can't rate it on a star.
Okay, right.
I don't do that for some books,
Okay.
and
Okay.
this is one of them.
Okay.
So, a bit of background. This book is, I think most readers would agree that it's a very hard sci-fi book. So,
Hardcore.
yeah, it's a term I believe coined by Brandon Sanderson, the American sci-fi fantasy author. He coined the term hard magic systems and soft magic systems. And I guess similar to that, there would be hard sci-fi and soft sci-fi.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah, right. I think
what I mentioned early on about like membrane.
Yeah,
by the
was that
power
hard or soft?
That was soft.
Soft. Okay,
Yeah.
brilliant.
Yeah.
This was mentioned a few episodes ago.
Yeah.
I think soft sci-fi is, I would say, like Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse-Five, even shows like Rick and Morty and Solar Opposites. I would call the soft sci-fi as well because they loosely borrow certain sci-fi elements like spaceships and aliens, but the reader knows that it's not taking the science bits too seriously. Like we're not really expected to believe that aliens will behave this way. Like it's very clearly still about the humanity and human characters. Hard sci-fi, on the other hand, I've heard people say the classic giants like Asimov would be hard sci-fi. It's very focused on the science. And then some people would even say they develop the story in order to discuss the science, not the other way around. Yeah, and I guess the three-body problem is definitely hard sci-fi. Both hard and soft sci-fi can be really good. And it's a very famous book, The Three-Body Problem. I've actually read and watched many people's review of it and heard what they said. And most of the reviews are very positive. And then they're like really impressed by like just the level of hard sci-fi that it goes into, because apparently there's a trend in recent sci-fi where things tend to be pretty soft. And I guess it's just good to see a significant work that's
I mean, to be
hard
fair,
sci-fi.
this book isn't recent.
You're right, exactly. I guess it's recent in the Western world after the brilliant English translation by Ken Liu.
Yeah.
The original work is in Chinese, of course, and I should know that I read the Chinese version. And I think my favorite, well, not my favorite, it's hard to say favorite, but like one of the key takeaways from the book is that, you know, we follow this main character, this woman named Ye Wenjie. She's a physicist, and she was able to make contact with an alien civilization. And yet she makes choices that reflect her deep hopelessness in humanity. So she says, basically one of the first messages that she sends is that, you know, humanity cannot save itself. Humanity is hopeless and we need extraterrestrial forces to come and help us. And then the reason she believes in such a hopeless idea is because she witnessed and went through China's Cultural Revolution in the 1960s. And she witnessed her father being beaten to death by 4 teenagers right in front of her eyes to a cheering crowd. And even afterwards, she was separated from her mother. And throughout the rest of her life and career, she was marked as the child of an enemy of a people. So all of her father's fault is kind of piled on top of her as well. So she's never politically clean. And, you know, she suffered so much, and like, basically, the revolution and the political upheavals destroyed her life. And I guess if anyone is hopeless in humanity, like that would be a good enough reason to make them hopeless.
And then, like, on top of that, not even just like in a social movement scale, like on her personal level, every time she trusts someone, she got stabbed in the back.
Right.
And she got betrayed.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's exactly what happened. And I think, you know, from a writer's perspective, right? If you want to create a character who is hopeless, there's no better way to do it than to put them through the Cultural Revolution.
Right. That's a good tool to have in handy.
Yeah. And I think I'm I'm just glad to read any sort of intelligent work regarding the revolution anyway. It's a step towards finally reflecting on it, even though China's not nearly doing as enough of that. But at least it's a start. And then I think what really bothered me my least favorite thing about the book is the structure.
Okay.
And I think it totally reflects the fact that the author is more a scientist and engineer, and he's not as interested in the craft of writing. And it's the way he structured the story. That there are so many themes, right? Like, should humanity be saved? How like science works in relation to politics and everything. But like, it's not organized in a way that delivers the most punch to the reader. I think that's definitely an issue with the craft. Yeah, that's my biggest critique of the book, and I think a lot of people would agree with me. It's just, I think he needed a good editor. That's what he needed.
Yeah.
Writers are nothing without their editors.
I was going to ask if you thought that maybe it was an editorial choice to keep it that way. But maybe he was, this is my story, this is my way of telling it. People read it.
I'm not
maybe whoever's decision it was a bad decision. Yeah.
Oh, maybe it's worth to read the English translation.
Yeah. I bought the English translation. I'm going to read that. And I should mention the discrepancy between the Chinese and the English versions. So the English version opens with the Cultural Revolution scene with the violence.
Much like the TV adaptation.
Yeah. But then the Chinese version still has those chapters, but they're moved a bit further back to about like chapter 4 or 5.
The structure is different.
Yeah. And that's, okay, I read on Wikipedia, so I don't know it's as true as Wikipedia is true, but like apparently the American translator was like, hey, I think these 3 chapters about the revolution are really important. How about we move them to the beginning of the book? And then the author is like, yes, please do that. I originally wanted to do it that way anyway. But then like they told me to put it back because we don't want to offend the censors that much. How ridiculous is that? It's the same thing. It's just move it back a little bit and then like that gives you a higher chance of bypassing the censorship machine. Like how stupid. But yeah, apparently that's what happened. And I think this relates to my critique of structure. I think those 3 violent scenes in the beginning would have been a better structural choice than the Chinese version. I can't talk about this book without mentioning the misogyny.
Yes.
Even though the main character is a woman, she says, and this is obviously what the author thinks, that, you know, the female mind is not suited to high levels of like physics, academia, or science.
Oh God, not this again.
Yeah, I was reading it and I was just like, wow. You literally...
We all saw this coming.
You actually like wrote that and then you wrote that and you don't feel ashamed in publishing it? Like that must mean because he thinks it's really correct that, you know, it's a totally okay thing to say about women.
Like the immediate impact of misogyny is that I'm not sure if it's intentional or not, but like every single female character brings chaos and destruction in a story. Like not even Ye Wenjian, later on, like every time is a female who brings destruction and then the male who saves the world.
Oh God.
Yeah, I've heard there's a lot of stuff like that, even in book 2 as well. So I'm looking forward to that.
To be fair, some of the sci-fi elements of the book, it's not novel. So it has been written before. But I think what really stood out in this franchise is that the discussion of sociological impact. So like the contrast between the human society and the free body world.
Oh, they call it Trisolarian.
The Trisolarian. I really love that translation.
I love that as well.
That's like chef's kiss. Somehow like the Netflix TV series decided to not go with it.
What the fuck? That's crazy.
Yeah, then they just call it Santi, like with the PE.
That's so awful. Trisolarian is the perfect translation.
Sounds so badass.
Yeah. So they're from a world in which there are 3 suns.
Okay.
So tri-solar, Trisolarian.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
You see, like it's.
And will you guys watch, or did you watch the Netflix adaptation?
I did.
I haven't yet.
I watched it.
And did you like it?
Okay, so what I really love about the TV series is that how dynamically, like the show makers, they diagonally put like all 5 main characters into one series, even though like some of the characters only appear later on in the books.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I think that it really solves the misogyny problems in a way.
Really?
Yeah, it really does. And then it just creates this like really smart, nonchalant, and then cool female like young physicist, and then I think that's really cool. And then how they positioned all these characters and then how they interact with each other, it's really cool. Like I think that like the character building, it's a really nice touch by the showmakers, DD.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I finally ticked that huge item off my TBR.
Yeah.
I'm glad I have read it, and I will spend some time really studying it.
Don't.
Oh, I meant I will study the
Study the physics. You mean?
The difference between the English and the Chinese versions.
Right.
Yeah, because it is like the first major Chinese science fiction work to make it to the global market. And that in itself, whether you agree with it or not, or whether you think there are better works out there that deserve this status, it is what it is, and it found its place.
Yeah.
So it's worth, thinking about. Yeah, that's it for my review.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah. I guess now, Malena, could you tell us about your Bible?
Of course. I
Oh.
call it my Bible, but it's actually called, I'm going to say it in Spanish first. It's called Mujeres que corren con los lobos, which the translation would be Women that Run with Wolves. It's written by Clarissa Pinkola Estés, which I think she's North American, but I'm not really sure. But this book, basically what it does, it compiles all the intercultural myths and legends that as specifically women, but men and women have heard throughout all of our lives, such as stories as the Beauty and the Beast, the Ugly Duckling, etc. And what she does is deconstruct. First of all, she tells a story and how she's been told that story, or how she likes to tell that story. Afterwards, she analyzes every single component of the story and how that has an impact, or has had an impact, on the female psychology.
Wow.
So what's really interesting about this book, and the reason why I call it my Bible, is that it's not a book that puts the blame on anything. You can interpret what she says as she's putting the blame on patriarchy or society or misogyny, etc. But if you go a step above and beyond that, it actually gives you tools on how, as a woman or as an individual or as a human being going through this simulation that we call life, can actually gain all of those tools and come back to like our true authentic self. And it's a very interesting book because for me personally, whenever I read it, it always has the right and correct message to say to me. I moved to Australia 4 months ago, and last month and a half, I've been feeling like really lost, not knowing where to go. And this is the one book that I always keep on my bedside. And whenever I'm lost, I don't read it. I don't know why. But one day, this book fell out of my nightstand.
It came to you.
And it opened right on the chapter that says, it's in Spanish, but it says, El camino a una misma, the way back to oneself.
Whoa.
Imagine how much I cried. I'm a Pisces, by the way, so I cry a lot. But imagine how much I cried.
Spoke to you.
Something spoke to me, the universe, God, whatever is up there. It just came through me through words. And as you guys read in my bio, I am a true believer that I personally understand life through words. I understand life by reading. I understand myself through writing, and then I understand other people by speaking. So everything is word related to me.
I love that.
And this book is just like my map through life and through me. So if anyone out there is feeling a bit lost, especially women, go find this book, or I'm sure it will find you wherever you are at one point in your life. It's just amazing. Yeah.
That's so beautiful.
How did you first come by this book?
It's actually really interesting because it's that, talking about parents, by the way, going back to what we were talking about, it's one book that my mom always had in my house. And if you see, this is the same version she has back home. It's very like, there's nothing that's very appealing to me, or that was very appealing to me as a teenager. It was like, oh, this book about like shamans and, you know, transcendence. And I was like, this is very intimidating for me, maybe when I was 16, 15. And then when I started my whole writing journey and my whole understanding myself journey, call it, the algorithm started showing me different things about this book. And I was like, oh, maybe my mom was right. Because she was always, Mali, you have to read this book. You have to read this book. You have to read this book. And I was like, no, if my mom reads it, I'm not going to read it, you know? But fair warning, mothers always knows best.
Mom is always right.
Mom is always right. And before coming to Australia, this was her gift to me. She gave it to me a couple months before coming to Australia, so I could read it before coming here, and it's very much of an anchor for me. Wherever I read it, it just always has the right message, especially for girls and women growing up. It gives you like that kind of cozy feeling of, oh, we're all going through this, you know? I'm not weird. I'm not
You're seen.
different. Exactly. And it gives you a sense of community just by being a woman, I think. Yeah. So it's very good. I highly recommend it.
That's great. I'm curious, what are the insights that this book has to offer on Beauty and the Beast?
So actually, that's the chapter that I have to go on right now. But for example, the Ugly Duckling, Ugly Duckling, that's one that I read before. It basically, you know how the Ugly Duckling was actually a swan, and that's why he couldn't find his place among ducks because he was
a swan.
He was different. And so basically what she translates it to is that women tend, especially during our teenage years, tend to not feel at home, maybe because you don't sympathize or you don't find yourself comfortable either in your own skin or with your family or the place where you were born. We can't choose where we're born or what family we happen to be in this world with. But she gives hope that if you stay true to yourself and when you spread your wings, you'll find people that are maybe from another culture, maybe from another country, maybe from who knows where, but they will somehow be aligned with you, and that you will find, as long as you're true to yourself, doing what you like to do, not complying with what other people need or want from you, you will always find your people. And I mean, we're here. You guys are from China. I'm from Argentina. We met in Sydney. And here we are talking about what we love the most, which are books and reading. So that's like the precise and most, how can I say it? Like consequential and evidence of what she's saying, I think.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think, I love how you take this book as a map and a guide to go through certain moments of life.
Yeah.
And then how you said, like, there are algorithms, and then it's sort of like a divine intervention.
For sure.
Yeah. And then, like,
For sure.
I really appreciate that people respect these like divine guidance.
Yeah.
Like sometimes we have signs in life and we just ignore them and then go our old way.
There's my other map, which I left at home, my other Bible 2.0. It's called The Artist's Way. I'm sure most of you guys, yes. Have you read it?
Yeah, I was reading it.
By Julia Cameron.
Yeah.
She is, she basically sets up a map, again, on how to find your creative path back again, your creative voice. And what she says about divine interventions, it's really interesting because what she says is basically, whatever is up there, the universe, God, call it whatever you want to call it. It's creative energy. We are in a creation.
Oh, yes.
So as humans, our most compatible energy or the way that we like the creative or the creational energy that's how we are aligned with what this world is. It's energy. It's creative energy. Everything has been created. Everything renews itself. Everything transforms. And we're part of that as well. So listening to the signs or listening to what the world has to say to you, that's you being part of the energy, you know?
Yes.
And the way of us as writers, as readers, putting, like, when we absorb so much information, there needs to be a part where we give it back, being through a short story, through a song,
like
through a movie.
creative outlet.
Exactly. Because what I feel happens sometimes is that if we don't put our stuff out there, if we don't put ourselves out there, and this is a way of reminding myself as well, is that it is as if it were a pot that's boiling, and someday it's gonna erupt if you just don't show yourself for whatever, because you are transmuting reality into codes for people to understand.
Transmuting. We literally talked about that last episode.
So beautiful.
Transmuting.
Yeah.
There's an interview that they did to Jorge Luis Borges. I'm sorry, Argentines, don't kill me. Jorge Luis Borges, way back in the day, where he talked about how as artists we have the duty.
Oh yes, the one you sent it to me.
I sent it to you because when I read it, I just kept seeing your face, and I was like, I'm gonna send it to him because this is something divine. I don't know.
I sense this connection.
Exactly.
What is the duty?
So the duty that we have as artists is that we should take all of the experiences that we have and all the sensorial things that we see and transmute it into our art form. So for example, for a painter, if he sees, I don't know, I'm seeing blue right on the at my right now, and I'm like, okay, I see this blue. What does this blue represent to me? And if it gives me, I don't know, kind of like a sad feeling, how am I my duty is to take all of the sensorial
like ambience.
The experience of living and transmuting it through my story, through my experience, through my put it in as a craft, being a painting, a story, music, I don't know, but just transmuting experience into a personal experience, and that sharing that experience with the world, you'll see it's much more universal than just keeping it to yourself.
Yeah,
I believe, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Because we are artists, we're naturally more receptive, and we have this clearance of like the signals that are around us.
Exactly, for sure.
And I think definitely the more you say, the more you notice as well.
And the more you get to appreciate.
Yeah. Once you have an outlet, like you actually have more inlet as well. Notice more things.
Everything starts being a source of information for you to pull from.
Muse.
Muse.
Inspirations.
And that's what life is about, guys. That's bottom line. We're here to experience every emotion, every feeling. But while we're going through it, it's hard. So a way to keep myself grounded, I find, is that whenever I'm feeling stressed, I'm feeling down, I'm feeling very happy, I'm feeling in love or whatever, I'm just like, okay, this is an experience that I could later put onto a character. Or that I could, that maybe someday I could share this experience with someone else
fantastic.
And find empathy with another person.
Yeah.
It's hard in the moment, but when you see the bigger picture, it's like
it's all worth it.
It's all experience. Yeah.
Like writing really does take over your whole life.
It does. We were talking about this before starting the podcast, and it does. It's an overwhelming, all-encompassing feeling that takes control.
It really is a way of
everything.
life.
Yeah. And I don't know if this happens to you guys, but my friends are now like, oh no, she's going to put this in the book, so they're careful what they say around me, because it's like, oh, she's going to take inspiration from this now. So it's interesting. Yeah.
That concludes our reading update section. Thank you to everyone. And I hope you enjoyed it.
Cool. Okay, let's move on to the other little discussion. So we're already having some. So you mentioned about like going through some really tough times. I'd just like to know that if you think during the creative process, like of overcoming these hurdles are like essential to your creation.
Totally. I mean, before coming here to Australia, in Argentina, I was always in my comfort zone, so creating was quote unquote easier because I had my routine, I had my way of going about my creations, I had, like my place, my dogs, my family, my mate. For those who don't know what mate is, Google it. It's what Messi drinks. It's amazing. That's what
your horses?
My horses. Yes. I had like all of my life kind of like stable, certain. Coming to Australia and starting this new journey of, I didn't know what I was coming here for other than a gap year or a gap whatever. it took me, and it's still like taking me completely out of my comfort zone. So of course, that stepping out of my comfort zone is going to bring a lot of frustration and a lot of hurdles in my creative process, because maybe you don't find the right place where you feel comfortable to read or write, or, you know, or maybe you're trying to get a job so that you can survive here, and then you don't have that much time to read or write or create whatever it is that you want. It's a new country, other side of the world. So yeah, it's been interesting to see how I adapt the creation or the creative process to the uncertainty that I'm going through now. What I tend to do is always, and this I took from the Artist Way from Julia Cameron, is always write at least 3 pages in the morning as soon as I wake up.
Really? Every day?
I wake up, here is my book.
That's so
That's so impressive.
And every single day I wake up, I've ever since I got to Australia, this
Morning
is my third
pages.
book, my morning pages, and I just write away.
Yeah.
So if maybe one day I don't get to write my short stories, or I don't get to create something new, at least I have these 3 pages that are a mirror of how I was feeling this day. And eventually, when I read back upon them, it would be, oh, maybe this is interesting for a character, or maybe for, I don't know, maybe if I write a biography about myself, I'll know exactly what I have here. So at least I'm doing something for me every single day. Another thing that's really helping me just to stay grounded and to try to remember what the big picture is that 2 things actually. One is to at least once a week always do something that will feed my inner artist. So maybe it's going to a museum or having a stroll down the park.
Every week?
Every week.
Oh, I love that. I love how you like identify what feeds your inner artist, and then you like actively cater to that.
It's so, this is Julia Cameron. I'm not taking responsibility of anything, but it's so interesting it's like a date with the artist. That's what she calls it.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And maybe like you go walking down the street and you see, I don't know, a bat. And you're like, oh, I wonder why this bat. And you
COVID,
yeah. Let's not call it again. But you know, like it's just to, maybe it's walking down the park and appreciating what bats are doing, and maybe that triggers something. You're like, oh, maybe a bat could potentially be in my story. Or, you know, going to a cafe and listening to conversations, not to be a gossip, but you know, it's everything's inspiration. Yes. Or talking to a friend, or going to a museum, etc. Like there are a million ways of doing things that will feed your inner artist, because we tend to get so caught up with day to day and day to day and
with the other life,
the
less important one,
the muggle life, you know, like the mundane life.
Get me out of it.
Please, I need someone to just take us out of the mud. It gives so much fruition, and it makes you just blossom. To close this thought process is that when I was living in my comfort zone, I felt like if I was numb. I could relate to songs. I love Taylor Swift, by the way, to anyone who's listening. But I could relate to her songs, but I didn't feel them. And ever since I got to Australia, it's been as if I'm not numb anymore. I'm a bit raw at times, but I get to connect. Like now I understand what people are singing about, what they are writing about, how crazy they go about not finding or not knowing where to go, or the feelings that meeting a person makes you feel, or the feelings that having a friend be far away from home makes you feel. And all of that while going through the motions of instability or uncertainty, remembering that all of this experience will someday help others and oneself through words, through pictures, through whatever it is. It's what brings calmness. So those are the things that I try to like ground myself with whenever I feel like I'm steering away from my creative process and outlet. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for sharing. I really love that you said by going out of your comfort zone, it really stimulates your creative process.
For sure.
I think it's same with life. Similar with writing and creating is that if you're within your comfort zone, you're not really growing.
Right.
If you don't feel that friction, that toughness, that difficulty going forward. You're not really growing.
Yeah.
It's just really impressive that you write morning pages.
It really is to have a routine like that.
Yeah, and then it's like
it's
so
nice.
many writerly friends have recommended me this little habit.
Yeah.
And then I think was writing morning pages is like the process of having a coffee date with yourself.
Oh, totally.
You are getting to know yourself better as a person. And then it doesn't really matter what you write in those pages, because you are just having this thoughtful inner peace conversation with yourself. And then whatever goes there, it can be like totally random thing.
For sure. And yeah, it's great because you never know what you're going to write. And what also happens is that I've been trying to like make my friends do it.
Yeah.
We've discussed is that when you write it, you forget. So like when you go back and read it, you're like, oh my God, I wrote about this, like, or I wanted this and I didn't even know that I wanted it. And you go back and like, look at me now, and it's because you're having a conversation with your unconscious. So I think that's the important thing about doing it in the morning, because there's this thing as well where it's like, if you put too much pressure on yourself to write and be perfect at it and have the perfect routine, then it's going to be counterproducent, because you end up writing things that are not genuine, things that are maybe that you think you should be writing, but you know, like it's a very thin line. And I think that I consider myself a highly overachiever person, and this is what I'm working through. But like, it's very interesting, like just trying to cross that line of this is what I want to write as far as it's possible to do it. So if there's one day that I skip the writing,
that's fine.
Like, breathe, that's okay. No one's gonna come and be like, Malena, you didn't do this, you know?
Yeah, well, no one's gonna come, but the scary thing is no one's gonna come and care about
True
it.
that.
No
True
one's gonna push you back into doing
that's so
it.
scary.
You know?
In the wise words of Taylor Swift, you're on your own, kid. You always have been. But it's cliche, but it's cliche for a reason. But going back to the conversations that you have with your unconscious, it's like you wake up, you write. And I did it today for like an hour. I have no clue what I wrote about. No clue. And then
even today?
You
forgot already?
It was like at 8 a.m. I was like, okay, yeah.
You're such a morning person.
I'm such a morning. I love the mornings. I love the morning. But yeah, it's very interesting to see, like, I have this rule where I don't read it after 6 months at least, because if not, it's too fresh and I cannot gain
like
perspective.
That. Yeah, you need a gap.
Exactly. So yeah, I highly recommend it. It's a very therapeutical and mirror to what's happening.
Wow.
Yeah. The Stoics said, as long as you feel you have enough, everything is an added value. And that's when you feel like you have enough, you're happy. Everything else is an added value. So yeah, just think what you have, the roof above your head.
Love the reference to stoicism again.
I'm obsessed with stoicism. Yeah, Marcus Aurelius.
I guess I'm interested in your visual storytelling background as well. Can you tell us, as far as you can, a bit of the work that you did for Disney and Coca-Cola?
Of course.
You used to work for
Warner Brothers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, basically what I did, I was content partnerships manager for different production companies. One in the gastronomical industry, the food industry, that we created food videos for brands, and another one was at Warner Brothers. It was a very interesting process. I studied social communication back in Argentina, and all of my life I've been really like interested and thrown towards the film industry and storytelling on an audiovisual format. And yeah, that's basically what my first work years. I worked at L'Oreal for a bit in analytical marketing, which wasn't, L'Oreal was so much fun, but it wasn't really what I was called to do. And when I stepped for the first time into, a shoot day, filming day, I was like, oh yes, it's here, this is what I was meant to do. And I was basically in charge of leading the production process and leading the client through it. So what the client wanted, I would communicate to the production team, and what the production needed, I would communicate to the client, which was a very interesting position to be in, because you got to see like the two bells or the two sides of a production company. a production process. And it was highly interesting, highly demanding as well, because it takes a lot of effort and time of oneself trying to fit into both places. But yeah, it was really interesting to see how the brief of the client and what they wanted, how it developed on each stage of the back and forth. And for example, when I was working over at Tastemade, it was like, the client wants a pink napkin, for example. Oh, but we don't have a pink napkin. Okay, what are we going to do to find the pink napkin? So it was very high. You had to be like on your toes all the time. It gave me a lot of experience and problem solving skills that I have up to this day. Yeah.
I'm curious in terms of, I guess, the commercial making process, how much like creativity and originality would you get, if you're the director or the writer? Like if you wanted to do like a completely new, unheard of commercial format, would the clients be open to accepting it, or would there be like a pitching process?
I'd say that there's of course a pitching process. I was always involved in branded content, so it was a merging of the two worlds, what the client wanted and what our formats and our storytelling as a brand. When I was working at Warner Brothers, there was a pitching process, which was very interesting because you got to propose a lot of different things. And then what I came to find out is that everything, well, we all know this, but everything is tied up to money. So maybe you have the best idea in the world, but it costs 10% more than what the client had in budget. So that's a no. Or you find a way to solve it. But in the end, what I learned from my experience is that everything came down to money. And that's where maybe I kind of thought like, okay, I like this, but I want something that I can create 100% by myself and not have limits on what the brand wants, what the brand needs, what my company needs, what my company wants. But that experience of knowing where the limits are has, of course, structured the way I think about my personal work now.
Wow.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's really
Gives
beautiful.
a ground to work. Yeah.
It's like when you were put in chains and then you made to dance.
Yeah.
And then once you're off those chains, you can dance more freely now.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And
But I think what Malena said just now was that having the chains made her stronger and more
Yeah,
fit.
that's right.
exactly. Of course, everything changes in the middle. Like you need to have your own voice, but it's really interesting to have those like benchmarks to work around.
Real world constraints.
Exactly. Yeah.
So right now you're mostly writing short stories.
Indeed. Yes.
Would you ever consider writing like a film script or a theater
Great
script?
question.
Okay.
Because what I've come to find is that whenever I write in very visual terms. So I see what I want to tell first, and then I write it down. So when I read back on my stories or my short stories or even my songs, I realize that it's like, okay, I'm kind of writing a narrated script without like the proper structure. So I think that translating into a script afterwards is going to be super easy because it's okay. So scene 1, exterior, like that would be easier. Yeah.
Yeah, writing a visual format.
Yeah,
that's great.
Exactly.
Could you tell us a little bit about your songwriting process?
Yeah.
We're so curious.
Oh, I'm so nervous to talk about it. Okay, so I've been literally writing songs since I was 8 years old, and Hannah Montana appeared into my life. So I blame it all on Hannah Montana and Taylor Swift. That's what they made me who I am today.
Hannah Montana, is that Miley Cyrus?
That's Miley Cyrus, yes.
Oh, okay.
I'm sure that any 20-something-year-old girl can relate to this, but we always had the dream of being a singer-songwriter and traveling the world. But yeah, basically, I've been writing songs. It was whenever I didn't understand an emotion, I would either write a song. I didn't know how to play the piano back then. I still can't. I just work my way around chords. But back then, I would just think of a melody, write the song, and I would put it in my notebook when I was like 8. And I did that until I was 12. And then when I started understanding chords and the structure of music, I've always sang either in the choir, or I've had little bands, or I would film myself like singing, etc. And And then when I turned 17, I was finishing high school. I started really like trying to understand melodies and how chords and progressions worked. And that's where the music came first and the lyrics came second. But music for me has always been about the lyrics and the storytelling. And so, yeah, it's basically an outlet of me trying to understand my emotions and putting them into words. It's a very interesting process with songwriting because it's not something that I can force. It's something that just comes out.
It's intrinsic.
Exactly. It's when I'm like, okay, I'm going to sit down and write a song. No, that's not going to happen.
You got to be in the flow.
Exactly. And all of us...
You have to be doing something.
and all of a sudden, I start humming something. I'm like, oh, is that mine or is it Taylor Swift?
You know that phrase, when inspiration strikes at 3 a.m.?
It's literally, and you wake up and you're like,
I have to write a song.
Yes.
But then like you write the song at 3 a.m. and then you read it the next day and you're like, oh shit.
Yeah, exactly. And then you have to like, okay, let's polish this for a bit.
So what's your genre of music?
It's very...
It's all-encompassing.
All-encompassing, of course.
Classical meets hip-hop.
No, but it's very like pop folky. Like kind of indie pop folky, yeah. Kind of like that. But the last song I wrote was a country song, guys. Like, I love, ever since I got here to Australia, I've been diving deep into country music, which I really like. But it's like a mixture of, I don't know, it just comes out. And you have to embrace it when it comes out. And then maybe it's shit, you know, but at least you have a song. The most nerve-wracking part about songwriting is what we talked about before, is putting it out there. I think that's my most vulnerable way of showing my creativity. What we talked about before is the pot that's boiling. And if you don't open the lid, it's gonna explode.
Yeah, it's time to let it out.
It's time, isn't it? Yeah.
Do you release it on Spotify or do you play live? Or
I used to play live. I detached, when I started uni, I detached a lot myself from that music sphere of my life, and now I'm starting to get back at it again. Yes. Yeah.
Nice. I wanted to ask you that I learned that you have a way of seeing characters in colors.
Yes. My how do you call it? Synesthesia?
Synesthesia?
I think, yeah.
I have no idea.
Okay. Say for example, if you have Alexander Hamilton,
of course.
what do you think his color is?
Oh, he's deep blue.
Deep blue.
Deep blue, yes.
Whoa.
Very deep blue.
Like you had an answer. You had an answer ready for this. Like you've thought about this.
You thought it through. You have every single character. Like
probably, yeah.
Is it just fictional characters or real people?
Oh no, real people.
Yeah,
like for example, you're purple. You're bright yellow.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
It's so weird. People might think I'm crazy, but maybe I am. But it's always been like that. Like,
so is it like my face or? No, does my face look purple to you?
It's your aura.
Your aura. Yeah.
So you're like a scanner.
Maybe.
you know the paintings of Jesus with the yellow circle on his head
with a halo. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, so my halo is purple. That's good to know. I like purple.
Well, with my friends, we always kind of like play this game. We're like, oh, what color is this person? And we come to find out that most of the times it matches.
Yeah.
And you're
kidding.
Yeah, I swear. Or like,
oh, forget about the zodiacs now.
We're going into colors.
Yes.
Yeah, just like, please tell me who I am.
Exactly.
Would you be considering writing a musical?
That is my dream.
You two should collaborate because Achim wants to
do it. A new version of Hamilton.
Yeah.
That is my dream.
Yes,
I would love to.
But it's like one of the hardest formats to
yeah, it's all encompassing yet again.
It really is all encompassing.
Yeah.
A lot of things going on.
Yeah.
Okay.
But let's do it. Yes. Now we have a plan.
Oh yeah. We will write something about tarot.
Yeah, we should. And we. Okay, this is me brainstorming right now.
Okay, yeah.
A character for each one of the major how do you call them in English? Arcans or the major
arcanas?
Arcanas.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I don't know what that is.
Well, I think that's another another episode of the podcast just talking about tarot.
Okay, right.
But it's like the main cards of the tarot.
Okay, right.
And the main energies, basically.
Yeah.
So each one of them can be a character.
Yeah.
You know, and we can start from there.
Oh,
a song for
I
each one
love
of
that
them.
so much. Okay.
That'd be so much fun.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
That's it for today's episode of Licensed Poetics. I hope you've enjoyed listening to it as much as we've enjoyed recording it and having this conversation. Thank you again to our guest, Malena.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been great and all-encompassing. Yet again.
It really is. I'm your host, Fang Ling.
And I'm your host, Achim.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Till next time.